Once you've found enough sources, then you can begin compiling the information into the notes pages. So this video is going to explain how to do that properly. This is a blank notes page. Right here at the top, it shows you what you're supposed to include in each note. First, you include the quotation that you want. You want to include the citation. If we get that out of the way now while we're taking notes, then when you're actually writing the paper, you don't have to worry about it. You've already got it done. So let's get it done while we're doing the notes. And then after you include the quote and the citation, add a bullet underneath and explain what the significance of that particular quote is. Why is it important to your paper? Why are you including it? Just a little explanation. And just as a tip to make things easier later on, after you copy your quote from the source, when you're about to paste it into the box, you want to right-click and then hit this, paste without formatting. If you do that, it'll paste it in Times New Roman, in font size 12, so that later on when you're writing the paper, everything will already be Times New Roman font size 12. You won't have 3 different fonts that you have to change into Times New Roman because they'll already be Times New Roman. So if you get that out of the way now, we won't have to worry about it later. Okay, this is an example of what a notes page should look like. Here we have a quote. Televised scenes of children campaigning against rigid segregation being bitten by Alsatians and knocked off their feet by water fired with enough power to rip bark off a tree caused international outrage. So I have the quote, and then I have the citation done properly right there. Now in this case, there was an author listed in the citation, in the source. So that is the author's last name. And because it's from the internet, there's no page number, so it's just the author's last name. Now one thing you want to notice is that the period goes outside. It goes after the citation. There's no period here at the end of the sentence. There's no period in the citation itself. The only period is outside the citation because that's where the sentence actually ends. Same down here for the second example. Now this one, no author was listed, so all we had was the title of the article itself. So that goes in quotation marks because that's how you punctuate the title of an article. And again, the period goes after the citation, outside. Also notice that there is a space between the end of the quote and the citation. They're not bumped up next to each other. There's a space there. There's a space there. There's a space there. People like to bump the quote and the citation up next to each other like they're all one thing, but they're not. You need to separate them with a space. This one also is the title of an article. You can see there's no author listed, and it's got the quotation marks that indicate that it's an article, and the period goes outside. And for each one, I provided some analysis. What made it significant? Why did I include it? So this one about the televised scenes of violence against African Americans, I said in 1963 was the most intense, pivotal year of the civil rights movement because the violence that had been ignored for decades was finally broadcast into America's living rooms. So I explained why the quote was important to my main idea, what it has to do with the movement itself. Since this is the historical background page, that's what I'm sort of setting up here. What was going on in American society, what was changing in American society that, in this case it's a song, what the song talks about. This is another page that is in your booklet. It's the last 2 pages of the booklet. It's the InText Parenthetical Citations page. So it talks about how to do your citations properly. So why do you do citations? Writers cite their sources in the text of the paper to give credit for ideas that are not their own. If you use information from a source and fail to cite it, you're committing plagiarism. So what do you cite? You cite quotations, you cite summaries. Anytime you paraphrase information from a source, you cite that. Statistics. Any information you get from one of your sources, you must cite it. And then it goes on to explain how to cite different things. for example, if you have a book source, you would cite it by the author's last name and the page number. And this says, notice there is no P for page number. No, it's just last name, page number, period goes out here. Notice there's a space there. So that is how you cite a book source. Now, if you put the author's last name in the sentence, then the only thing you need at the end is the page number. And then it gives you other things, like if you have multiple authors listed. But the stuff you're probably going to use most is on the next page. This is probably going to fit most of the citations that you use for this paper. If you used a database, the database probably gave you the citation. So you'll use that just as it gives it to you. But if you're searching for things and you find things from, say, the New York Times or Time Online or credited websites online, you probably run into two different options. One, you'll get an author. If you get an author for an article, then you cite it with just the author's name. Notice there's a space there, and notice the punctuation goes after the citation. So all you include, if it's an internet article with an author listed, you just put the author's last name in the parentheses. If you have an internet source with no author listed, then you just put the title of the article in the citation. Notice there's a space there. Notice the period goes outside. The title of the article is in quotation marks because it's the title of an article, and that's how you punctuate the title of an article. That will probably cover most of the situations that you have. If you come up against a situation that's different than any of these, call me over or Mrs. Westgate, and we'll help you get it cited correctly. Mindeman, out.